Hey guys, Dozer here, bringing you a new video that's not about the competitive side of Flesh and Blood for once. This video is actually going to be about the new player experience, as well as how to get some tips to get new players into the game by comparing the Lexi Blitz decks to a Blitz deck that I had constructed from Terrell's Zavaria packs, as well as a classic constructed deck that I did the same for my girlfriend. And these are actually her deck box, her sleeves, and her Blitz deck that she bought, and we'll be going in to see what choices I made in the Blitz deck that I made for her to learn the game with, as well as the CC deck that I made for her so that she would have some ability to get some reps down. And we can contrast that with the Blitz deck, unsleeved fresh out of the box, and we can start talking about that. So, first thing I want to talk about is that in any card game, I think it's very important for a starter deck to be a great first impression for every player. When I started the game, I bought two Blitz decks. I bought the Prism Blitz deck and the Levia Blitz deck, and I used those to play with my friend for the first time. We opened a box of Monarch together, and we put in some upgrades that we got out of the packs, and we kind of spruced up those decks and played, and it was a lot of fun. And I think any new player is going to get some good advice when someone tells them hey, you should probably buy the Blitz deck as your first purchase, because it's like a $10 to $15 thing, depending on when you buy it, and it has everything you need in it to start playing the game and learning the mechanics. And I think that it's like a nice product as well. Like, it has a lot of cards in it that you can use. It's got the unique Rainbow Foil Young Hero, and compared to like the packs that you can't get that out of. So I think it's a great way for people to start, especially with the consistency and the way it's been designed by LSS. So what's in the Blitz deck? Well, the Blitz deck has your Rainbow Foil Young Hero. It's got a weapon for you, tokens you might need, and a full set of equipment. Now, it's all common, of course, because it's a cheap product. They're not trying to give away legendaries or anything in the $10 box here, but it has things like Honing Hood and Mark of Lightning, Deep Blue. These are very affordable and easy to get options to help teach people how equipment works, as well as using the Iron Rot legs from Welcome to Wraith in order to give them an idea about blocking with equipment as opposed to just activating it for effects. So it helps, introduce people to the mechanics of the game, and you get the simpler weapon of Shiver compared to Voltaire or something like that. Again, it's also a common compared to the Majestic Voltaire. As far as cards, they've got red and yellow Buzzbolts. They've got red and yellow Frazzles. They've got red Dazzling Crescendos and one red Snapshot. From there, they've got two red Entwined Lightnings, one red Lightning Press, one red Weave Lightning, two red Electrifies, two Shock Striker Reds, two Heaven's Claw Red, two Heaven's Claw Yellow, two Electrify Blue, two Amulet of Lightning Blue, two red Blizzard Bolts, two yellow Chilling Ice Veins, two yellow Chill the Bone, two blue Winter's Bites, two red Overflexes, one Bolton Shot, one Pitfall Trap, and one Take Aim. Red, yellow. So when we're looking at this assortment of cards, what are we looking at, and what is my takeaway from it? Well, at first, I really like how the ratios of the colors are in a pretty good distribution. With Shiver, you're only ever going to be shooting one arrow at a time, and since a lot of the cards that have Go Again in this deck are going to be 1 cost or 0 cost because of Lexi's flip ability to give things like Heaven's Claw, Shock Striker, and the like Go Again when they're flipped up out of Arsenal. You're also Entwined Lightning being able to attack for Go Again very reliably. Lightning was definitely a good choice to put with Shiver by keeping it all to commons, because the ice commons are a little clunky, and if you're trying to keep the deck as full common as you can go, then that would definitely be the right choice. Amulet of Lightning as well kind of helps with that by being a resource card, a lightning card. You can flip it, play it out. Like, it's well designed to give players a functional entry-level deck. However, there are a couple of things that I have some gripes on with it. So the first thing I found that was kind of interesting, by the way, for the competitive-minded people, is the fact that these cards are all missing Ball Lightning. You would think that Ball Lightning itself would be a very much auto-include type of card for this type of deck, to be able to say, like, hey, maybe Ball Lightning is like this good card. Maybe I should have it in the deck. But actually, you don't actually see, you don't actually see ball lightning show up in here at all. So it kind of makes me think that, hey, LSS, like, why isn't ball lightning in here? Did you kind of know that you'd have to ban it? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe it was too confusing with the on hit effect. But then we got Frazzle in here, so I'm thinking to myself like, well, that's just kind of interesting. But besides that, it also has one-ofs of the rares. So for instance, it has, in addition to it having a couple different types of ice fusions, the Blizzard Bolts and the Ice Veins, I think that's cool. You can be like, oh, like there are more ice arrows. These are just a couple of them, right? You've got the Chill the Bone, you've got the Winter's Bites, no Polar Blast, notably. And you've got the Overflexes in here. That's fine. Got our rares over here. We're going to separate them out here. Got our Amulet of Lightnings, our Electrifies, Heaven's Claws. All these are good cards to play out of Arsenal and definitely fits in with the default Elemental Lexi game plan for sure. If we get the other rares out here, the Weave Lightning and the Lightning Press, Arsenal and Lightning Press is definitely not what you want to do, right? In this deck, it doesn't have New Horizon. There's no way to get it out of there or to fire that onto another card unless you have an attack action that's not an arrow. So it's very counterintuitive to be using that. And so I just find that interesting that it's at a one of, because, hey, maybe that will help them not feel like they should Arsenal it, and then maybe they should use it to not get that bad player experience. But what I did want to touch on with these is that Snapshot, for instance, to me is an odd inclusion in the deck because without Go Again on an arrow initially, Shiver isn't going to give it Go Again by using the Snapshot ability. Snapshot is kind of expensive to use alongside a lot of other cards. So for me, it feels like it doesn't really have a place in the deck, especially since there's no Death Dealer or something, which is a much simpler weapon to use for a new player. And it just feels to me that Snapshot, unless you're doing specifically Weave Lightning into it or something like that, just doesn't really fit with what the deck is trying to do at a basic level. Bolt and Shot is similar. Bolt and Shot without Voltaire is just kind of like not that great. I mean, as a target for Shiver, it's all right because you can pay 1 resource to swing for 5 Go Again. And if you have like a follow-up card like a Heaven's Claw or a Shock Striker, maybe you can attack after that. But if you're playing a Ranger, you're thinking you're going to use the arrows and the bow. So having the 1 arrow per turn thing in a go wide build is just kind of a little interesting. So by which I mean not very harmonious, right? At the same time, we've got Weave Lightning. Weave Lightning is a great card for Lightning. It does everything they want it to do. It helps them fuse. It helps them flip. It helps them go again to things. And there's 1 copy of a red. I get that it's a rare, but I really feel like a card like Weave Lightning should have been at 2 of before they put a Take Aim. And yeah, Take Aim reloads. And yeah, Take Aim reloading can help them put lightning cards into their arsenal and do plays. I get that. But if you're trying to keep things welcoming to new players, reload isn't too complicated of a mechanic, but the implications of reload onto someone who's trying to get the bare minimum grips with the game is going to be a bit more confusing and off color than, say, just having a second copy of Weave Lightning, in my opinion. It fuses, it's the lightning card, it gives +3, it gives Go Again, you know what it does, you can rely on it in the deck. I think a second red Weave Lightning would make a lot more sense than a red Take Aim, for instance. Additionally, something like Pitfall Trap. Pitfall Trap's kind of cool, right? Like, it's a trap, it's from a set that has been out of print for a while. It's the same thing with Take Aim, right? These are older cards that have been reprinted in this box. And, traps can only be played from Arsenal, deal 2 damage to the attacking hero unless they pay 1. Just as this is a trap card, it's also a trap for players to put it in the deck. Without access to the second Arsenal slot with New Horizon, Pitfall Trap is going to sit in your arsenal, and sure, you might be able to use this to block pretty reliably, but like, if you draw this card and you have to choose between arsenaling this or arsenaling a lightning card to help turn on your next turn or something like that, it can feel really bad to have a card that gums up your arsenal that, if, like, let's say you flip it, right? And you're like, oh, wait, this doesn't give me benefit. Okay, it sits there, whatever. You can't use your bow for the rest of the game. And if your opponent notices that, they can just not attack you for a little bit while they set something up, and you're just at the mercy of whatever your opponent's setting up because your arsenal is just not really functioning. You're not Azalea who can get rid of something like this, and you can't play it out of there for any real reason. So, I mean, yeah, you have Honing Hood, I guess, but it just feels like, why is Pitfall Trap in here? It doesn't fuse. It doesn't really synergize with the thematic even of the Elemental Ranger. So it feels like Pitfall Trap should have been a different card. And Lightning Press obviously is great. Obviously, Lightning Press is a great card and can really help a new player just kind of get those little understandings of the reaction step into play. Like, hey, I'm attacking, and the reactions, I'm going to Lightning Press, right? And so Bolt and Shot feels kind of out of place. Snapshot feels kind of out of place. And Take Aim and Pitfall Trap all feel kind of out of place as the rares. And that's fine. Like, not every card has to be a home run. Not every card has to be really strong. But with LSS putting these types of cards into the deck, I can't help but feel like they're trying to give people the inkling of like, oh, there are other cards in the game besides these. There are cards that I might want more copies of to synergize with my deck better, like Lightning Press or Weave Lightning, and that might lead them to buy packs, right? But the thing is that, at least in my opinion, I really think that the Blitz decks would be a great place for LSS to put at least one Majestic, maybe two in the box, just to help incentivize people to be like, hey, there's like these Majestics, and then there's like this rare, and they've got like this ability or whatever, and that can really help them feel like, oh, I have something that's good, I have something that is cool looking, right? And then they can also have that synergize with what they're doing. Now, what would be an example of that? Well, personally, I think the first thing that they would probably want to do is not do Voltaire or something. Shiver is a simpler weapon and is a lot easier to grasp than the go again, like, intricacies of Voltaire with, bolt and shots and things like that. And the Dominate is also very useful. However, like, when I gave the choice of Shiver and Death Dealer to my girlfriend when she was learning the game, and she's a smart person, so it's not like that's really an issue here. I gave her the choice between Death Dealer and Shiver, and at first she was really struggling to understand Shiver because she's never really played card games before. And as someone who's never played card games, she doesn't really have that baked in language of, reading the card top to bottom, understanding the different costs, like the cost symbol, or, the once per turn instant clause, or the modes, or any of that. Compared to, I give her Death Dealer, and it says, hey, once per turn, you can pay one. If you have no cards in your arsenal, you put an arrow from your hand face up in your arsenal. If you do, draw a card, right? This ended up being a much better learning tool for her because she was able to do the same thing every time, get comfortable with it, and then start reading the other cards and learning what they did to try and figure out how they worked with Death Dealer. Specifically, that was in a Snapshot Death Dealer type list. And in that list, there were definitely max copies of Snapshot because you kind of need to have the deck function, and Death Dealer with Snapshot ended up being very useful for her. Beyond that, I think, aside from the format of the cards being a little ambiguous for newer players to card games, which is pretty easy to get over, Majestics, right? I think Majestics are realistically no more rare than like an ultra rare from a game like Yu-Gi-Oh! Personally. I find it very interesting that a lot of Majestics in the old sets, back when there were super rares and such, command these really large price tags. But nowadays you have something like Flash Freeze, or you have something like even the Lexi specializations, or the pseudo specializations like Lightning Storm or Light It Up, that don't really command a price at all because, well, they're just not that rare, and at the same time, they're just not that powerful that people need to have them for every deck, right? Not like a mandatory, 3 of, as people say, Command and Conquer. If I've got 3 Lighted Ups, that was pretty easy to get a hold of, just by opening packs, just by, going on to the secondary market, just as able to get some Flash Freezes, just over time by opening packs or getting them off the secondary market. So I say all this because I think 2 copies of Lighted Up, or a Lighted Up and a Flash Freeze, would be so much more interesting in the deck and more thematic and on point than Take Aim and Pitfall Trap. It doesn't have to be a lot, right? It's not it's not a good idea even to buy 3 copies of the Blitz deck to try and get a playset of Lighted Up and Flash Freeze, right? But being able to see the difference between rares, majestics, and whatever else comes after that, I think would give new players who are trying to get into the game an idea of like, oh, hey, this is what a majestic is like in the game. This is what a rare is like in the game. They're like, oh, is there a red lighted up? I'd like to see that. And they look it up and like, oh, hey, there isn't a red lighted up. Oh, that's because majestics are not meant to be at 9 colors. They're only meant to be 3 ofs in your deck maximum, or they're legendary, right? Like Chain Specialization, which was a rare back in Monarch. So I say all this to say that I think the Blitz decks that they gave are serviceable. I think there are some changes they can make, such as using simpler weapons. If they're going to bring in older cards like Iron Rot, they may as well bring in Death Dealer, just to give them a chance to say, hey, you have a full red hand in this giant red deck that we gave you. Why don't you just put an arrow in your thing and draw a card? And I think that would go a long way to help new players just kind of identify with the game better. But yeah, I think 2 majestics in every deck that are different would be really great. It wouldn't really affect the power level of the deck very much. It'd be kind of like their bomb card. And like, hey, whoa, I'm saving up for Lighted Up. I got Light Up in here. It's a lightning card. It fuses with everything. Flash Freeze is mainly a lightning fusion, but if it's also an ice fusion, I kind of get the benefit. It's not like the Lightning Storm card. There's still some more cards that they can look up and learn about, but it would just give them a bit of a bump in incentivizing them to say, hey, I want to fill out the other copy at least. I want to get 1 more Light Up. I want to get 1 more Flash Freeze because it works with the deck. Rather than going for these really awkward options of like Take Aim and Pitfall Trap, which don't naturally synergize with the deck, and are from older sets and can just lead to really awkward play patterns, especially for newer players. I think that these are kind of a miss, personally. But yeah, so that's the Lexi Blitz deck. Overall, that's what LSS was giving out to people who were buying them to say, like, okay, this is how you start playing the game. Great. Okay, well, let's take a look at the Blitz deck that I had come up with, that I had started my girlfriend on. So Lexi, Shiver, and I did use Death Dealer with that, but I have put that with the CC deck because that's the one she likes to use. Honing Hood, Deep Blue, you'll notice that those are the same as the Blitz deck, as well as Bullseye Bracers and Snapdragon Scalers. I specifically chose Bullseye Bracers because it's an easy way to put an arrow into your arsenal to be able to do some stuff. Also, Arcane Barrier is really good just against the field of Blitz decks. A lot of classes do arcane damage, and so getting them to have that ability there to start getting familiar with it was going to help them just learn about pitching and all those little things over time. But it's also useful for other things, unlike Null Rune. And then Snapdragon Scalers, I went with instead of the block because, well, it just helps the deck function a lot better, and since it's from WTR, it goes by the same kind of idea there. So I had 2 red Weave Lightnings, 2 red Lightning Surges, 2 blue Heaven's Claws, and 2 blue Electrifies, at least as far as the initial lightning cards. Yep. I had 2 red Frazzles, 2 yellow Frazzles, 2 red Dazzling Crescendo, 2 red Snapshot, 2 yellow Snapshot. I had 2 red Weave Ice, 2 red Icequake, 2 blue Icequake, 2 red Winter's Bites, 2 blue Winter's Bites, 2 blue Polar Blasts, 2 red Chilling Ice Veins, 2 yellows, 2 red Blizzards, 2 yellow Blizzard Bolts, and then 2 red Overflexes. So right off the bat, you'll notice that a couple cards are missing. That's because they're in the CC deck that I had built for her, namely being Lighted Up, as well as a couple other cards. Like I had put, if I just kind of rifle through this here, like Lightning Presses I had put in there. Pulse of Volthaven I had put in there. Just a couple little Majestics. That's another good one that should have gone in there. Pulse of Volthaven should be in the Blitz deck. Because, again, it works with Lexi specifically. It's a one-of. It's not like a rare card or anything. It's not like it's a cold foil or rainbow foil or anything. It's just a non-foil Majestic. Let them have a couple cards like, ooh, what's this do? Anyway. But yeah, this is kind of what it's become now that I've had to move some cards around because I don't have infinite copies of everything. And I just want to point something out. So one, there are no one-ofs, right? If you're going to put a card in the deck, unless it's Pulse of Volthaven because it's legendary, just put 2 copies in there. Like, the new player is going to have enough to worry about learning the mechanics, learning and remembering what the other players are trying to do, as well as trying to figure out, like, hey, these are what my cards do. And they're having so much information they're having to deal with. Reducing the number of different cards in their deck to 20 instead of having like 25 or 24, whatever the number is, just really helps them say, okay, I've seen this before. I know what this does. Let me play it and kind of get used to playing it. And then once they start figuring out the play lines, they can start figuring out, like, oh, this would be something I should look out for. This is something I should play around. Oh, should I even keep this card in my hand? Should I pay with this or should I play this? There are all these considerations they start making. Right, like many times I've seen my girlfriend try and play Icequake Blue at the start of her turn rather than using it to pitch because, in her head she thinks, oh, well, maybe I want to play it that way because of what she has in her hand, because she sees something that I don't as a new player. It kind of makes sense to her in that way versus us who have a lot of experience on Fab. We might have a lot more fundamentals of like, oh, maybe this color is in here for resources first and foremost. Maybe we use it for pitching, and maybe we use it for flipping with the ability. We have a lot more of the understood language already built into how we play. But again, the biggest thing in here is that these cards are all 2-ofs. You know what you're getting every time. They function together, and they have a playable deck. And I, again, had put in some of the copies of the Majestics, like 2 lighted ups and 2 flash freezes at the time, to enable there to be a little bit more of that understanding of like, hey, there are some other cards. They have a bit more impactful effects, but you're not going to have that many copies of them. And that's something to look forward to in the packs or in other sets. So those were the 2 Blitz decks. And so let's take a look at the CC deck that I had built for her as well. So first thing we're going to do is just kind of go through here. Put these aside there. All right, this goes here. And then this can go right there. Boom. All right, awesome. Cool. So first things first, she got her Blitz deck full art, got a token, Frostbite. I gave her Death Dealer because originally this was a Lightning Lexi Snapshot Death Dealer list. It had Bullseye Bracers, the same thing as the Blitz deck. Snapdragon Scalers, same thing as the Blitz deck. It also had a Honing Hood, same thing as the Blitz deck, which you'll see, except this time it also had a couple proxies that I had made for her because as a new player, I didn't want to buy her legendaries to just try. But so I gave her some proxies. But what's interesting about these proxies is that she didn't actually end up liking to use them, which was kind of interesting because New Horizon was kind of complicated. It had a lot of things that you had to know about the game to really make the most use out of it. And without a certain cost curve, without a certain set or way to build the deck, Voltaire's not even that useful. And she kept forgetting that she got to choose a benefit at the end compared to Death Dealer, which was much more simple and straightforward. Like, oh, hey, put a card in, draw a card. Like, much more straightforward, much easier to get familiar with the core mechanics of the game. Although, to be funny, and a shout out to all you guys who use Tunic and don't actually tick it up, she never missed a Tunic trigger. So please read your cards and don't let the newbies show you up. So obviously, aside from that little anecdote there, try to give her access to new stuff, especially as she gets more comfortable with the game and now that Ball Lightning's gone. Giving her access to Voltaire and all these cards, at least in the proxy way, until she figures out if she likes them or not, is really going to allow her to start to get more familiar with the mechanics of the game as she learns it. So that's great. Also, I threw in Mark of Lightning after she had learned the game a little bit because it's a little hard to see that. But yeah, Mark of Lightning, just to be able to allow her to start seeing what other options are out there. So as far as all that, we've got 3 ofs in almost every case. Flash freezes, lighted ups. This is the post Ball Lightning list. The flash freezes were new, as well as a couple other just like awkward pitch cards. 3 blue Icequake. I didn't have 3 red snatches, so I just have a yellow in there as well. Same thing with Lightning Press was kind of running out, so I have 2 reds and 1 yellow. 3 red Weave Lightning, Pulse of Volthaven, 3 red Snapshot, 3 yellow Snapshot, and of course 3 blue Snapshot. So 9 snapshots to go with the Death Dealer. A lot of lightning cards to go with those. We got like the Entwine Lightning, we got the Lightning Surges, we got 9 copies of Electrify, all the colors, and then beyond those, I guess we can kind of slide all this up. in a way here. It didn't work so great, but whatever. You get the point. Rainbow, Snapshot, Rainbow, Electrify, some lightning presses and some attack buffs with the ice quakes. The Majestics to help kind of put some other bombs in there, as well as some snatches to kind of combo with the go again and just kind of be a decent deck on its own. 3 yellow Heaven's Claw, 3 blue Heaven's Claw for lightning synergy and for fusion and for pitch and block. 3 red Dazzling Crescendo, 3 red Frazzle, 3 yellow Frazzle, and 3 blue Frazzle. So the only one of or whatever in the deck is Pulse and Volthaven, and with equipment and stuff that kind of shakes out. And you can give them a 61 card deck. That's not a big deal. They'll figure it out. It's not a big deal. But having 9 copies of Frazzle, right? Having 9 copies of Electrify, having 9 copies of Snapshot, and having a bunch of the good colors of the other cards, such as red Lightning Surges, red Entwine Lightnings, red Dazzling Crescendos. Instead of in the Prism and Levia Blitz decks, which I remember had a lot of really awkward pitches, they had Blood Tributes, and they had stuff I don't know, they just had some really awkward cards in there that I thought were just really bad inclusions, but much improved on the Tales of Aria one, I guess. But a bunch of 9-ofs that they know what they're getting every time. A couple cards that kind of stick out, the Snatches, the Light Ups, the Flash Freezes, Ice Quake, Lightning Press, Weave Lightning, and the Pulse. And you kind of get into this environment where the deck is fairly straightforward. It's very beginner friendly, but it has a lot of mechanics that the beginner still has to spend a lot of time learning. You still have to learn how to do, what is fusion? What's blocking? What's pitching? What's flipping stuff up in the arsenal? Can they load, for instance, the card Overflex into their arsenal? And that was a question. It was hey, there's an arrow on it. It's got the Ranger border. That means it's an arrow, right? It's no, you actually have to read the bottom here to see if it's an arrow or not, right? And that was kind of an awkward thing because they're trying to learn everything. They're trying to put their head around it, and then you give them a card that looks like it should be an arrow, and it's not because the visual clarity just isn't there. Until they start to realize, okay, the border doesn't mean that it's an arrow. The text at the bottom does. And then they start to get more familiar with reading the cards, and then they can start actually enjoying the gameplay because now they have an idea of what their cards do. They get excited when they get to put a combo together where they can do all the stuff that their cards say, and it's not an awkward hand. And that's always great to see. So as far as tips that you can use to make your own decks for beginners to try and help get them into not only Blitz, but also CC, because again, CC is the premier fab format, and in my opinion, it's the real way to play the game. So we really want to try, I think as a community, push people towards, once they've gotten their feet wet with Blitz, to graduate into CC and to really try and enjoy that. I think the way that you'll want to help them do that is by focusing on 9-ofs, decks that have just a lot of copies of the same card, just to keep it simple, just to keep it simple enough so it's hey, this isn't very intimidating. This is really easy for you to pick up and play. It's just like your Blitz deck where you've got max copies of these cards, and you can try and say hey, most of these cards are the same as each other. Every turn is going to be pretty consistent for you. Sometimes you're going to have some bomb cards. Sometimes you're going to have some really bomb cards. And some cards are in here because they synergize, and you start to learn more about the intricacies of the game because they're hey, well, how good is Red Snatch? It just draws you a card. It's hey, well, if you give that go again by flipping a lightning out of your arsenal, that's a really good card. Then they might say, oh, what other combos can I do? And then they can start making the game their own and start thinking about the game, which is the first step to becoming a player of the game. So I would say 9-ofs, throw a couple Majestics in there, give them the specializations, things that are unique to the character, that make the character really shine. Let them experience the character. You wouldn't want to show up to a fighting game, right? Or any video game these days and say, hey, I would like to play this, this fighting game character. And they say, okay, well, before you can use all the character's moves, you only get the basic kick and the basic punch, and you have to pay for all of the real moves that everyone uses in competitive play. That feels really, really awful. You don't get the real experience of playing the character. You don't get even a chance to try it out. without trying to get into more complicated things like, oh, well, how do I buy? So where do I go? What websites are trustworthy? What does that even look like to people who are uninitiated, right? So for a new player, giving them just all the tools they need right out the gate to play a consistent deck by, again, writing 9 ofs of things, a couple Majestics that allow them to kind of feel the power level of the character that it's meant to have, as well as a couple other just synergistic cards that go with the class. Really just goes a long way to get them to learn the mechanics of the game and start getting into it. So hope you guys enjoyed the game. Hope this helps you get some ideas about how to get your own friends into the game and get them enjoying all the different things Flesh and Blood has to offer. And in the meantime, I hope that for the next core set that we're going to get, that the Blitz decks have a bit more variety than just commons and rares. I think LSS can do a much better job for a $10 product to offer people at least some cards that would be worth playing outside of a Blitz deck. Obviously your commons and rares make up a backbone of a lot of decks, but without having those exciting cards with like the really cool artwork on them, like Light It Up. I keep using this as an example because like my girlfriend just really loves the artwork on this card. I don't think she's ever fused it yet because she hasn't really played it with this one that much. We do a lot of Blitz and this is in the CC deck, but having that option to be like, oh, that's a really cool piece of artwork that looks like the character I play and it's the specialization that's unique to her. Oh, I want to try using that, right? It kind of gets them excited about the game rather than being like, oh, well, I've got my deck here and it's got cards in it, and maybe they take to a couple cards. Maybe they get excited about a couple cards in here, but compared to some of the awkward cards like Take Aim and Pitfall Trap, even if it was just Pulse of Volthaven and 1 copy of Light It Up, it would be so much more interesting, I think, to be able to show off all the different mechanics. So that's just my opinion, though. Again, hope you guys got something out of this. Hope you can help bring new people into the game, and hopefully all the new people watching this can get an idea of how to get their own friends into the game, or kind of the perspective of a more experienced player and kind of how they would approach the situation. So otherwise, thank you for watching and have a good day. Peace. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like or comment, and be sure to subscribe for more free Flesh and Blood videos. The content on this channel is made possible by all of the supporters on Patreon. If you'd like to help support the channel, you can do so for as little as $1 a month, or you can check out the other patron tiers to get access to exclusive videos and other perks. Thank you to the Dreamweaver patron, Tara Blitz, you rock. Thank you to the Sentinel patrons, David Romish, Joe Gianoli, Michael Lynch, Tim J, and Scott Koo. Thank you guys for your support. I really enjoy coaching you all. Thank you to the Herald tier patrons, Ike Hagen, Francesco Lorenzi, Jacob Wilson, and Moonshaker. And thank you to the Spectral Shield patrons, Hasiel Diaz, Rachel, and Sarazar.